So there is something I've never seen anybody else ever talk about. I've never seen another victim resource categorize and classify their information this way. But it's that not every resource is for every victim at every stage of their journey. So I've written about this, and I'll put that article like below. Um, but essentially, it's like it's Schrodinger's resource. It may be victim blaming, or it might be helpful, and it just depends on where you're at. And a good example of how you can tell whether or not you are ready for certain types of resources is how the phrase take responsibility makes you feel. Now, it could be response ability, and I've talked about it in that sense. Um, but if you are in a point where that phrase makes you feel attacked and blamed for being a victim, for being abused, then that resource is not for you. But the thing is, later on, it might be. It might be empowering and not disempowering. And so when you're looking at a resource, it it highly depends on if the victim needs to internalize I've been a victim, I was abused, it was not my fault. Or if they are, let's say, they've done some healing and they're wanting to move forward in a way that doesn't repeat any patterns or cycles. And so they're going to be like abuse curious. They're going to want to know about abuse dynamics and particularly like what can they do differently? What might they have done that, you know, not I don't want to say contributed, but what choices did they make that unintentionally led them in this direction? And it might be giving the benefit of the doubt to somebody who had shown themselves to be not a safe person. There are many examples. Um, the needs of a victim are not going to be the same at all points of their journey. So when you're in that emotionally triggered part of your journey where you are, why did this happen to me? Is this even abuse? You are trying to reconstruct reality because intrinsic to the abuse dynamic is the fact that the abuser basically wants to pretend like reality isn't real. And they flip consequences, or they flip cause and effect. They make you the cause for them abusing you. They make you the cause and the effect when that's not reality. Reality is that they are the abuser. So you have to reintegrate your understanding of reality. And core to that understanding of reality is that you have been abused. It was not your fault. The abuser is responsible for their abuse. And you have to internalize that because that is reality. And once you have to be grounded in reality before you can start learning about, oh, okay, do I maybe have some emotionally codependent internal orientation? The kind of stuff you talk about maybe with a therapist. When you see people online or in reality, really, like you're talking to maybe people at work or friends or something, a lot of the time, our natural human response is to analyze it and go, oh, what did you do wrong? Don't do that again. And that's gonna be not helpful for a lot of the time. One reason why I like the subreddit is that instead of dictating to a victim of abuse, this is your situation and this is what you did and this is what you need to do now and da 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 da. It's more where someone can come across a piece of information and go, is this for me or is this not for me? Like, this is relevant? And it might not be. I had a really good reminder the other day that, there are some victims of abuse who are victims because they are disabled. They are in somebody's power and they literally cannot get out from under them. And it's so easy to start to think of situations kind of like from perspectives you're familiar with. And so, like, that was a good reminder to me that, oh, not everybody's literally able to get away. Not everybody unintentionally made choices that kind of led into this abuse dynamic. And again, I want to emphasize we made choices like that without full knowledge, without full consent. An abuser is often misrepresenting themselves and who they are until you're emotionally attached or until there's like an event that makes it difficult to leave, like you've gotten married or now you've had children or something. So it's not like you were presented with all the information and then went, oh yes, I'm going to make this terrible decision. A lot of the time we're making decisions because we have hope. We give someone the benefit of the doubt. Or maybe we're naive and we're just not familiar with these forms of misthinking, or we're not familiar with someone who is disingenuous and is hiding who they are on purpose. Or it could be they're unintentionally, they want to believe something about themselves and they want you to believe that, and they put that out there for you to believe. So anyway, there are people who are literally unable. They didn't make any kind of choice. They are in this position because of the circumstances of their lives. And so especially for someone who is coming in with that experience, reading things that talk about how you need to be empowered to make your own choices is likely going to be extremely triggering because it's going to make you feel blamed. That's how you know that resource is not for you. Um, people really want to give advice. People really want to give advice about what works. And the thing is I've seen different things work for different people. I could not say, oh, here is how you get someone out of an abuse dynamic, because it's going to be depending on the circumstances. You might have someone who doesn't exactly recognize, oh, I'm in an abuse dynamic. And so for them, you might give them a resource that says, hey, this is abuse. Like, this is what abuse looks like. Here's a checklist. And it's familiar to what they're dealing with, and they go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize it was that bad. And it makes them rethink about their situation. Or it could be that you give someone quote unquote tough love. I've seen that happen successfully. I mean, I don't personally say that like that's what we should do, but I've seen it happen where people do, get the kind of like dogpiled response, and then they go, oh my gosh, the fact that everyone thinks that what they're doing is pathetic is highly motivating. And so, I've seen that work. Again, I'm not saying anyone should do that. I've seen, I like the model where people like kind of go through the information themselves and kind of self-incept it. Again, you're really, the problem underneath everything is going to be people's self-awareness, their understanding of reality. And everyone kind of comes to that in different paths and different ways. And so in a therapeutic dynamic, when you're sitting down with a therapist, they're building the relationship with you. They create a place that's psychologically comfortable, as USQL Witch pointed out, like creating this space that's like comfortable, but then maybe like that feels safe, but then maybe you like drop a little thing that makes them feel like, enough uncomfortable to like look closer. But essentially mimicking the kind of secure attachment that you would have with a parent or someone who loves you, who creates the safe space for you to really be able to look at things. Whereas when you encounter people in the wild or information in the wild, a lot of the time it's going to be, how can we fix this? What's wrong here? Let's fix it. And the problem is that someone is misoriented toward reality, or they're misoriented towards the situation, themselves, their understanding, their self-awareness. And so to get people from one place to the other, it's going to take different tools, and some of those tools are not going to be the right tools. And so I'm such a proponent of victims being self-propelled on their journey, that they're the ones looking at what they need and internalizing in this process. And it's slow. It's not efficient. You're not going through a course. I've mentioned before, I'm not really a fan of courses, like where someone's I have a course and sign up for my course, and and then you pay for it, and that's how you get out of abuse. I'm not a fan of that, particularly for victims of abuse, because the abuse was giving up, maybe incrementally, or maybe you never had it, but you don't have autonomy over yourself. And I think it's so important for a victim of abuse to be able to have autonomy over themselves. Now, is it challenging when you're outside the dynamic and you're looking at it, and to you it's so obvious? This is abuse. This person is abusing you. They don't love you, because we don't treat people we love like this. And it's so there's such a desire to come in like, this is wrong, and da 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 da, and or to tell a victim, like, you're doing this wrong and you need to do things differently. And that's unintentionally maybe recreating that process that the abuser did with the victim. And it's hard, because the victim is now in a situation where they're misthinking and making poor decisions, like objectively. And when you're outside, you're like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And I think a lot of the times too, when you are the person that's had that experience, when you've made those choices and you're watching someone else do it and you can't stop them, but you desperately want to stop them, it's like a horror movie. You're watching a horror movie where someone is, I don't know, leaving the group when they shouldn't. And you're yelling at the screen or in your mind, you're like, no, what are you doing? And it's objectively hard to watch and engage with. Like there's a reason why many victims of abuse get isolated. It's not always because an abuser is isolating them. Sometimes people pull away because it's extremely difficult to watch. And not everybody, and I'm not saying that people should have to. We all have to make decisions for our own best, like mental health and self. Anyway, for safety, emotional safety, physical safety. So anyway, when you're looking at a resource and it feels like it's telling you, you did this wrong and you need to do this thing instead. And that's not something that feels like a tool. That feels disempowering. It feels like you're being blamed. It doesn't feel like an analysis. It feels like an attack. That resource is not for you, at least not yet. And then at some point, it's going to feel empowering. It's going to feel like descriptive, not prescriptive. It's going to feel like something helpful, not harmful. So you can use it and move forward, having made adjustments in how you think, so that you can move forward feeling confident that you will not be in this situation again, or if you are, you will be able to self-rescue. But again, Schrodinger's resource, maybe it's victim blaming, maybe it's not. It's going to depend on the victim. It's going to depend on you. Anyway, I hope this makes sense, and I'll talk to you next time.